People that have woken up in bed with a stranger. What's your story? When I was 11, I went to my friend's place for a horror movie sleepover night. I woke up with a 4-year-old boy who turned out to be her little brother, clinging to all my blankets in fear. He had eavesdropped on our sleepover after pretending to go to bed early, and was now convinced a killer doll would murder him in his sleep. Their mom made us all hot chocolate and then he slept in her bed all night. I was taking a train from Munich to Venice. It was one of those trains that the little rooms have chairs that pull out into beds. An older Italian gentleman came in the room and as the train took off he made the sleep hand gesture. So I crashed out with this old dude. I woke up to him tapping me letting me know we will be in Venice after the next stop. I was around 19 years old and at a weekend festival where most people camped out in tents. I got hammered and blacked out on Saturday and woke up on an air mattress in somebody else's tent. I sat up to get my bearings at some point in the morning and a couple was also in the tent, but not laying on the air mattress. The guy sat up right after me and said, "Buddy, I don't know who you are, but you better get the fuck out of here." I didn't stick around to ask any questions. Not really woke up with a stranger. But I did wake up on a stranger's couch once. Looked around and sat up to see a woman staring at me. I was startled and realized I had no idea who this woman was. Then realized I was only in my underwear, so I half covered up and she asked who I was. I said my name and asked where Jill was, the girl I thought I went to see. She looked confused for a second before bursting out laughing. Turns out Jill's neighbor didn't lock her door and I was obviously very drunk. I ended up making a sandwich and drinking half a carton of orange juice before hitting the couch. Thank God she was so nice. Skylar, if you're reading this, thank you for not calling the cops. Haha. Not as raunchy as some of the stories, but a friend of mine in college woke up in some random girl's bed that she didn't know. She was so drunk that she thought it was her dorm room, and the door was open, so she got in the bed and slept. When she woke up there was a note next to her that said something like, "Hey, I don't know who you are, but you were really asleep last night. Don't worry, it's cool if you crash here. I was going to spend the night at my boyfriend's. Just please make sure you close the door when you leave. P.S. I left you a glass of water on the nightstand." Apparently that girl came back to her room and found my friend passed out on her bed. She decided to be really nice and let her sleep it off. I woke up with an eye patch on. It was November 1st and I managed to pick up a cute woman who dressed up as a pirate. I was so blackout, I charmed myself into being with someone way out of my league. She would later tell me I couldn't get my dick up, making her regret her decision. Alcohol gives, alcohol takes away. Woke up, didn't remember his name, pretend to ask for his messenger so that I could get his name again. Next month will be our 4th anniversary. Edit. I woke up this morning, say, "Good morning hot guy," and opened my phone and saw this blows. Thanks for the stories, glad to know that I'm not alone. And yes, I hope I can learn his name when, if we got married, at the wedding. The stranger wasn't in my bed, he was standing beside it looking down at me. He had not been in my apartment when I went to bed, he had broken in and apparently spent quite a bit of time in there before entering my bedroom. He'd broken in through one door and created an exit for himself that took him past the door he'd entered through and out through our other, almost never used, door. I chased him out but lost him in the alley behind my building. The police believed that my reaction saved me from a sexual assault and possibly from abduction. Unfortunately they never caught the guy. Not a bed but kind of an abandoned trailer in the middle of the desert. Found shelter, slept in it, woke up there was another person in there. They didn't know I was in there either. When I stood up and looked around they were staring at me all wide-eyed and clearly freaked out. I didn't know what to do and we just looked at each other for a little bit. I don't know what to say so I offered her some corn nuts. We both laughed at that and then we shortly left without asking any questions. That's the closest I ever got to a one-night stand. While still living at my parents' house, woke up after a club night. It was still a bit dark, but I saw someone next to me in my bed. Spent 15 minutes trying to figure who this was before I decided to take a look. Turns out it were my extra blankets I used to fill up the space between bed and wall. Decided I needed a lot more sleep before going out of bed. Away at college. Went to a bar, met a girl. I woke up the next morning in an on-campus apartment sharing a recliner with said girl. Neither of us lived on campus or knew who lived in the apartment we ended up at. Well, I did, but not in the way that you'd think. So basically I went to sleep in my friend's bed because he got on the sofa and I woke up with a girl next to me. We didn't do anything the night before because multiple people have reported that they saw her coming into the room and just laying down next to me telling them that I was her boyfriend, which I wasn't, and then going to sleep. She may have confused me for her boyfriend and when I woke up I just snuck out and went home. Dunno, can barely remember flashes of the nightclub, dancing with some girl, and then waking up in my hotel room with her next to me fully nude and my buddy fast asleep in his bed. I don't actually remember getting laid. She wasn't a hooker, I still had all my cash the next morning. Vegas, man. How about the opposite? I was out drinking with this girl and her friends I had just met, ended up going back to their hotel room and hooking up, fell asleep around 3 a.m. Woke up around 5 a.m. with a bad hangover and completely alone. Somewhere between 3 and 5 her and her friends packed their shit and checked out of the hotel while I was asleep. I remember me falling asleep, then I woke up at 4 a.m. because I felt somebody laying in my bed. There was this random little cat that literally just entered to a random house giving no shit. Now it is my lovely pet, family member UWU edit. Here you can see 2 pics of when he just got into the family and 1 recent pic. I know a guy who went home with a stranger. Went pee in the middle of the night naked. Went back to bed. Woke up to screaming. He had gone back to the wrong room and was naked in her mother's bed. Not sure if this counts but I woke up under an SUV while tailgating at a D1 college with my pants around my knees, underwear still on. Game had already begun and as I climb out from underneath I get loud cheers. Oh, he's awake. From people I didn't know that were watching the game on TV outside the stadium. Turns out I was making out with one of their friends underneath the SUV after stumbling up and being really friendly. I passed out mid-fooling around so she went into the game. When I was awkwardly standing there after getting the rundown they offered me a beer and I just said, yeah I think I'm gonna go home, and began the 3-mile trek back to my house. I woke up to the sound of rain hitting the tent I was in, not my tent, and the random guy next to me saying, oh fuck. My unicycle. Honestly it was terrible. I went to bed one night with my fiancé whom I loved, but the next morning that woman was a stranger. She was cold, distant. Admitted to me that morning she cheated the week before. I was crushed. I didn't say a word, just walked out the door. I was at a bar in Wilmington and I got crazy drunk. I was hanging out with some college kids because my buddy I was there with got laid so I was on my own and bored. We did a ghost tour, saw some sights, and of course a few bar crawls. I woke up in my bed in my hotel room with my buddy's one-nighter. Apparently she had showered and crashed into the bed after they were done and hadn't bothered to move. We woke up spooning naked. Took me a good hour of panic the next morning before I realized that I had not in fact partaken in the leftover gravy stirring. I woke up in bed with a woman with the funkiest tattoos imaginable. No clue on how I got there at all. Still inside her. No idea how we managed to get there. Disturbing. She had no car and mine was still at the bar. Awkward conversation and parting of the ways. Her husband was due back from a trip in a few hours. No more Long Island iced teas for me. I had not clue we were getting a puppy until I woke up next to it. That's my story. Hostel in the Philippines. Woke up to some drunk man bun dude squeezing into my bed with me. Mine was the one next to the door, so I figured he just stumbled in. I politely tried to tell him it's not his bed, but he refused to move so I violently kicked him off. It was hot as shit, so I already had trouble falling asleep earlier and this just pissed me off. Great trip though. Slept with a dude in college and didn't realize he had a girlfriend. She was calling in the morning and he turned over to me saying, babe why are you calling me? The most shame walk ensued. They're still together lol. I went to a bar with no shoes on and only my passport, no money, wound up in Jamaica Plains and had to borrow quarters from the guy the first hooked up with so I could take the train home and buy flip-flops. Dated him for a bit after. Another time my roommate's boyfriend's roommate saw me making out with a stranger at a bus stop and could tell I had no clue who that person was and made me come home with him. Very strange and to wake up next to him after being nowhere near their house tears of joy. Alcohol, more alcohol, random female and chlamydia. I once rescued an injured bat and brought it to my room. Went to sleep and found a guy passed out on the floor and the bat was nowhere to be found. Weird shit. Not exactly the answer to the question, but my dad told me something scary after his stroke. Because he couldn't feel one side of his body, he would sometimes wake up in the middle of the night and think a stranger had broken in and was laying next to him. He would have to calm down and remember that he'd had a major stroke and didn't immediately realize that the person he thought was laying next to him was he himself. I married him lol. I was mad at my ex and saw him at the party. I started downing drinks with this guy at the bar and was like, hey, you wanna F? He just looked at me kinda surprised and stuttered, yay. So I didn't know where he was from or what his name was. We woke up the next morning and he asked for my number. We started dating and got married 3 years later. In a dorm room, early September. Roommate came home and didn't lock the door. Person who lived in the room the last year came in and climbed into what was now my bed and passed out. I woke up. Hilarity ensued. We became great friends. It became a one-night stand with a stranger that led to a friends with benefits for a few months, until I moved away. Then we were just friends for a couple years until we both got into committed relationships and the friendship just fizzled out. He was a cool dude, neither of us ever had real feelings for each other, just a couple kids who partied together for a while. My head buzzing, my vision blurry, I was stunned and embarrassed to see that I had gone to bed with Albert Camus' magnum opus. I wonder if anyone in here recognizes themselves as the other person in the story. Had a wild drunken party at a house I rented with 4 other guys. Lot of girls and just a few of us guys. I was pretty drunk and decided I needed to sleep it off. Woke up to one of the most beautiful babes from the evening before in bed with me. Totally naked. Would have been great, but I was trashed and rolled over and went back to sleep. We dated for a few months, but she and I were too different. Woke up in a couple's bed after a night of drinking inside a bar that also happened to be inside a hotel. I woke up to them doing a morning screw and the husband looked at me and asked if I was ready to help give her another round. There was a pack of condoms so I grabbed one, put one on and gave her a good time as she was pretty hot. I remembered a bit about a group of people they were with which turned out to be a swingers party held at that hotel. Still had all my money so they didn't rob me and the couple invited me over a few more times. Good times. No longer drink. Was a female in my mid-20s and fell asleep in a 60-plus man's hotel bed after a night of drinking in restaurant across from hotel. What could have been a recipe for disaster turned into him saying, if I ever had a daughter I hope she'd be just like you. I called Yara cab and here's your wallet. Be safe now. Clonazepam is a hell of a drug, and mixing it with alcohol is not only stupid, it's also dangerous. I decided to drink with a guy from my gym. When I noticed it was morning of the next day and I have just slept with another ma'am, and it was in that moment I realized I was definitely not straight. Got really drunk at a dorm party. Ended up carrying a passed out girl up to her room, 3 flights of stairs, elevator was out. Plunked her in her bed, took her shoes off. Then passed out on her floor. She woke me up by stepping on me and yelling at me. I was too hungover to argue and just left. Took too much water, had a blast in bed, woke up and was very unsure of who he was. He woke up and explained what had happened. Good guy. Very respectful and careful. I wish him all the best, even though I have no idea who he is. Wasn't me but a guy the first knew had a story. In college he got drunk at a party and his ride bailed. It was January and cold but he figured he could hoof it the couple miles back to his dorm. He took a shortcut through a graveyard and took a break, sitting on a grave using the headstone as a backrest. Well, he fell asleep. When he woke up in the morning, a houseless person had curled up next to him to share body warmth. Might have saved his life. Asked her what her name was and we just went to town under the sheets. She became my girlfriend for a year. Not woke up with one but came home from primary school around 11 years of age. To find a complete stranger in my bed. Being completely naive thinking he was a family friend. I made us both sandwiches to give to him. I returned to my room to find him gone. I now look back at this with complete horror. My family finds it amusing that it took me years to tell my family about it. One time at my cousin's house party I was absolutely out of social energy and went to a room to go to sleep and I woke up in the middle of the night with 2 of the most jacked dudes I've ever seen curled up together next to me and a unit of a bulldog sleeping in between me and the dudes. One of the guys saw me wake up and he asked if it was cool to sleep there and I said that I didn't mind but he should let me have some of the blanket because it was fucking freezing. He said, no problem bro, and then tucked me in like some mother hen and then said, good night bro. Shit was the most strange, wholesome thing I've ever experienced. Edit. I'm a dude by the way. I was 4 years old and deep in the phase where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and go into my parents' bed to sleep the rest of the night. My parents were hosting some of my grandparents' friends in their 60s who were visiting from overseas, and my 4-year-old brain reasoned that my parents would obviously cede their bed to this elderly couple, and sleep on the sofa bed downstairs instead, which was somewhat lumpy. So when I woke up in the middle of the night, I went down the stairs, snuggled in between the man and woman in the bed, and promptly fell back asleep. I don't remember anything after that, but my mom said she was awoken the next morning by me screaming bloody murder downstairs. I went to a party, had some beer bongs, and then smoked some weed. Then did some hard liquor, beer bongs, some keg stands, and then I am sure a lot more. The next morning I woke up, had no idea where I was. I was naked on a couch surrounded by a bunch of women. I had no idea who they were. Had no idea where I even was. I didn't know anyone, so I just took off and didn't look back. Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night, saw your boyfriend of like a year sleeping beside you, but somehow managed to forget that you have a boyfriend and you're actually staying over at his place and therefore screamed bloody murder? Yeah, this girl has. Woke up next to a very large guy. I am cis male American. He spoke no English. Recognized he was speaking Spanish. Took 4 years of Spanish in HS. Found out he was from Chile. Wild Turkey 100 proof. Friends still 25 years later. He became a physician and I am an RN. I was at a festival and got super drunk and high and stumbled into the wrong tent right next to mine. A buddy of mine was sleeping in the tent as well as some rando I had never seen before. They just let me sleep in, but I defiantly had a moment of WTH did I do when I woke up. Woke up at the wrong end of the bed with my knees on the floor and my ass out, but my head was tucked into the bottom of the bed. He asked where his wallet was and then left. Another time I woke up in a bed soaked with piss next to a man in a bunny suit. To this day I'm still not sure who wet the bed.